The Power Factor Show with Rick, Steve, and Caleb. Episode 51.
You can find this podcast and others at Gun Rights Radio Network, gunrightsradio.com. Podcasting freedom.
Brought to you by SAFARILAND.
Okay, welcome to Power Factor. I'm Steve.
I'm Caleb.
Rick. And today
So
we're going to talk
excited.
about, Just pick it up, Rick. Pick it up. Today we're going to talk about competition shooting and self-defense.
Now, I've been told, because I work for the internet, that all the techniques that I know in competition shooting will get me killed if I use them on the street. And I'm sure that you've heard that, and you shoot
And,
for
yeah,
USPSA.
yeah.
You know, you'll if
For
you
many
actually
years,
get
American
involved-
Handgunner made a point of that in all of their articles. That, yeah.
Well, it depends on which street you're on, too.
That is true.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's even some disagreement, I think, about whether
Will IDPA get you killed,
what's a
will-
competition technique, even. I mean, there's a guy on, you'll see guys on the internet now who are trying to essentially fishing for business by posting instructional videos, hoping you'll take a class from him.
Right.
Kind of deal. And there's a guy, and his self-defense tactic is essentially treat everything like an El Pres. And so
Shoot everybody twice and
no.
then reload?
Drawing and shooting as quickly as possible is the best defensive technique. Don't worry about cover. Don't worry about, it's like the best defense is an offense kind of a thing,
Yeah.
where he essentially, draws and shoots as fast as he can. And,
Well, that
and
might
that's
work
his
in one
defensive
situation.
Right.
Exactly, but for him,
Yeah.
that it's like, because he's an IPSC shooter,
He applies that to all
that's his skill.
situations, yeah.
That's his skill set, and so that's what he espouses as good defensive techniques. And I think you can find,
Well, it's the hammer and nail. When the only
Exactly.
tool you have is a
Yeah,
hammer, you want
right,
to nail everything.
right.
Exactly, and I
Wait.
think, but I think that works. It's true. Like if we were just discussing, there's a certain kind of, like an IDPA, you've got everything. Like I know one of the guys that shoots at our club fairly regularly now runs a shooting school, and he is absolutely against shooting everything twice, because essentially it
he's thinking that
promotes
in your mindset and everything.
always shooting twice.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
you go to a match, an IPSC match. When was the last time you shot an IPSC match, or more, other than maybe one stage, every target in the match wasn't engaged with 2 rounds?
Right.
I mean, invariably, you
Yeah.
draw and shoot 2 rounds. And his theory is better to save that ammo for the guy who needs it later, rather than plug the 2 guys that would have been stopped with 1 round.
Wait a minute, wait. So he's saying, shoot this guy once if he needs it, or...
Yeah, the idea that you
yeah.
just don't want to be conditioned to doing
Right.
anything that's essentially just like a dogmatic,
And
rule-driven
Okay,
technique.
now that kind of makes sense, but on the flip side, is it such a bad thing to be conditioned to shoot at a guy twice in the chest if he's trying to kill you? I mean...
Well, as opposed to shooting him 4 times?
Well, yeah, that's true.
I mean, the idea that twice,
Here we go!
Yeah, I mean, once is good, twice is nice. I mean, it's like, do you want to condition yourself to act and react certain ways based on what you see in competition, and have that be your fallback that you always invariably fall back to?
And that's the complaint about competition shooting, is that people will say that what you do in competition shooting will basically set the mindset or precedence that you're going to apply if you have a real-life situation. So the idea there is that you're going to shoot everything twice, you're going to stand in the open, you're going to do all the stupid stuff that you normally do.
Is it stupid?
Well, see, now-
figuratively speaking.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing with a defensive shooting is that you shoot until the threat stops. That may be 1 round, that may be 5 rounds, that may be 2 rounds. You don't know.
Right.
And that's the key thing that you have to keep in mind. And I can see possibly about, the theory is that if you're shooting twice, well, the guy who only needed 1 round, you've just nailed twice, so now it's a legal problem. You shot him once and he hit the ground, you shot him again as he was going down, he didn't
Right.
represent a threat. Or the guy who needed 5 rounds and you only shot him twice is still standing there,
Well,
and you're going on to the next thing. And
also, typically, if you're shooting a match and you've got 30 or 40 or 50 rounds on you, you can afford to shoot every 3 or 4 times.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're carrying J-frame Smith & Wesson and you shoot the first guy 2 or 3 times,
Right.
that doesn't leave you much ammo for any follow-up situations.
True.
The problem with the argument, though, of competition shooting techniques will get you killed in the street versus, not competition
Not get you
shooting
killed,
techniques,
yeah.
is
Having no plan
competition
whatsoever.
shooting, regardless of whether it's IDPA, USPSA, or ICOR, or Bianchi Cup, is it's a game designed around a set of rules, and you are trying to accomplish a certain objective. And what people will do a lot of times is they'll take this rule set and try to apply that to what is essentially a dynamic situation.
There are no rules in the street.
Right. And so for people who say that shooting will get you killed in the street, they're kind of assuming this idealized gunfight that is, of course, the worst case scenario for the competition shooter, because they're trying to sell you. And I hate to sound cynical, but ultimately, somebody, people are trying to, and even the most well-intentioned guys, they want you to take their class or buy into their mindset.
Yeah, right.
And so they're going to come up with, well, if you shoot everybody twice, the first guy needed 3 rounds, and the problem is that, again, you're trying to create a situation where technique X will or won't work to justify that technique or to break it down.
Right. Sure.
I mean, I got mugged once. I threw a cup of coffee at the guy and pulled a .25 caliber pistol out of my pocket. He ran away. So it's like, okay, well, that had nothing to do with competition shooting and everything to do with the fact that I played baseball in high school.
Because you threw coffee on
people?
So you throw coffee to everybody in baseball?
No, I'm actually left. So I shoot right-handed.
Right.
So I always, because I'm right-eye dominant, I've always carried with my right hand.
Okay.
But I played baseball. I throw left-handed.
Left-handed. All right.
So I've developed a habit over the years of carrying something in my weak hand, because when I would lock up my office, which is how this happened, I locked up my office. And this guy came around a corner with a knife, and I kind of panicked and just threw my coffee at him because it seemed like the thing to do at the time.
Right, sure.
And it worked, And again, that's had nothing to do with competition. No match I ever went to was it shooter ready, stand by, throw your latte. So
well, you might see
actually,
that
we've had
match.
Actually, I've now done stages based around that, where you start with an empty coffee and you throw it at somebody. But I think that you can have a mindset where if all you ever do is practice for competition and you don't think about the reality of self-defense, then you could be in trouble.
Well, I think that's what people like you to believe is that competition shooters will shut their mind off and not think about anything or what matters in a real-life situation. And the idea is that all of a sudden you're just going to go into competition mode and forget about your surroundings or the fight or flight idea where you're going to try to protect yourself.
Lost your mic, Steve.
Reel it in. Hang on one second. Steve was saying something really
Technical
smart.
difficulty. Yeah.
All right, so now he's going to continue saying something smart.
So the idea that all of a sudden you're going to forget everything, tune your mind out, and forget about everything that you need to know, I don't buy that. I mean, I think that the fight or flight, is going to kick in. That you're going to do what you need to do.
To the extent that you know what to do.
Right.
I mean, that's the other thing too. I've done a lot of competition shooting. I've done a lot of, I would say, reading about actual self-defense situations and self-defense theories. But I've never taken a class at a school that teaches self-defense.
But so Rick, we're so close to Insight's Training Center, located conveniently in Bellevue, Washington.
I know.
There's
schools nearby.
Yeah.
But I think I tend to believe that you can't tell me that somebody who goes to the range and shoots in dynamic situations, be it IDPA, USPSA, whatever, isn't better prepared for a self-defense situation than somebody who doesn't do that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's the key.
Your ability to draw and shoot and transition and reload.
Yes.
And do that under stress.
And do it under stress
Right.
gives you an advantage over somebody who doesn't do those things, regardless of what other preparations they may have made, and so just in general, I think the idea that shooting in competition will get you killed, the idea that there are certain that you're used to shooting under a certain set of rules that doesn't apply on the street, and that's the problem, is a problem. But the idea that you don't get some kind of benefit that would apply in a self-defense situation from continuously handling your gun under pressure of time, and the best we can do in simulating fight or flight is evaluation, apprehension, and compression of time, and trying to do things in a hurry, and it sort of simulates that. And I just think anybody who's used to operating under those conditions is going to be better off than somebody who isn't.
Who isn't, right, exactly. And we've talked about that before, that the attributes that competition brings to the game is really gun handling skills. I mean, learning how to shoot under pressure, how to do reloads, how to shoot on the move, all the things that you would need to do if you were in a gunfight. Those are all the main attributes of competition that you really can't simulate if you're just out shooting what we refer to as a square range.
Yeah. It's funny because you see this same argument held in the competitive martial arts community. There are people who, practice what they call reality-based self-defense, and they say that the guys who are MMA fighters would get killed in a real street fight. Now, I'm a big fan of mixed martial arts, and I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to get in a street fight with an MMA fighter because he spends a lot of time actually hitting people for realsies, and I feel a lot of that transfers over to competition shooting. Yes, we're not going into, I wouldn't want to clear a house with a SWAT team. I'm not qualified to do that, but I also spend a lot of time actually shooting a gun at actual targets. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're moving. Sometimes they do things I don't expect them to do. And while
fall down after I've shot at them.
Right. There's
in the case of steel targets.
Holy crap! I actually hit it. Oh, do I keep shooting now? But I think that helps you build that mindset again of your problem solving with a gun in your hand, and that makes someone better prepared to deal with a dynamic situation than somebody who just goes to the indoor range and uses their reverse teacup weaver grip and clicks away with their 40 cal Glock or Glock Forte. Excuse me.
That's a good one. Is that in the dictionary?
It is.
I was at the range, not to get too far afield. I was at the range, and there was a guy shooting a 44 Magnum.
Oh, God.
And you could tell, when he pulled it out of the, he pulls it out, and everybody's kind of like, oh, it's a 44 Magnum, And he starts to shoot it, and I can see the bullets going down range. And I'm like going, okay, it's chambered in 44 Magnum, but it looks like he's shooting the Dirty Harry, light special loads in it.
The ultralight.
Yeah.
He's got a Magnum primer in there.
Yeah, it's not quite so impressive when the thing's not, it doesn't have the ball of flame coming out of it.
Yeah.
But, it's the idea, I think, that regardless of whether your shooting techniques are, and that's the other thing, too, about self-defense, is, people talk, especially about IDPA, because it has this defensive kind of theme.
Vests.
Yeah, we wear fishing vests. And people say, it's like, that's not really what you would do in a self-defense situation. The rule is not appropriate for self-defense. I'm like going, okay, but self-defense is evolving. It's not like there's a dictionary where this is correct techniques, for this, or this is, people's self-defense techniques that they're teaching today are different than they were 10 years ago, and those were different than 10 years prior to that. And so the idea that we've got a sport that is based on defensive techniques, and then what do we update the rule book every 5 years to reflect one person's idea of what the latest defense techniques are?
Well, and this thing, if IDPA was truly based on realistic self-defense, every stage would consist of you yanking out a J-frame, emptying it, and then running the opposite direction while you screamed, help, help, police, into your phone.
I think running while shooting.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
That's it. Running like this.
That doesn't make a very fun game. And, I think all of us would agree what we do is a game.
Definitely, yeah. I heard a quote, I'm probably going to get this completely wrong, but Jim Cirillo once said that I think it was a pistol match is not a gunfight, but a gunfight is a pistol match, which puts it into perspective. I mean, if you are very good with a handgun, you're going to have a lot better chance of surviving a gunfight should you get into one versus not being familiar with the firearm. So I think, that's the key thing to remember there is that going out and participating in either IDPA or IPSC or whatever the case may be, while it will not teach you tactics, and you shouldn't think about it as teaching tactics, it is going to improve your shooting abilities dramatically, and make you much more prepared should something happen. I mean, right now, if you're not an accomplished shooter, the whole entire idea of drawing, you're probably going to literally be thinking your step through the draw. Or if you get to do a reload, you're going to be exactly. Yeah, and if you have to do reload, you're going to be thinking the whole entire process of doing a reload. And when you have to do your slide release, where you're going to be thinking that process through, or if you have a gun jam or whatever, you're going to be thinking that process through. Well, you do this in competition all the time, and it just becomes so automatic. You don't have to think about it anymore. It's just, it's built into your mind. You know what to do. You do it without even thinking about it. I mean, how many times have we done, reloads or jam clearing exercises where you don't even think about
what you do? How many times do you stick a mag in the gun?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Just a USPSA match, I had problems with my Glock. The slide locked back prematurely because I bumped it up, and I know I hadn't fired enough shots to go to slide lock, but I didn't realize. I just dumped the mag, put a new one in, and went back to shooting because, my gun's at slide lock. That's why it's time to reload.
Right.
The problem solved.
And for somebody who doesn't do a lot of shooting, they probably stop and sit there and analyze
What the hell happened to my gun?
What went wrong?
Or they're just not familiar with it.
Yeah,
Right.
I remember when I took the intro class, my first introduction to USPSA competition, and the instructor was explaining how to evaluate different types of jams and how to clear the different types of jams. And I'm thinking, so it's like if you've got a failure to eject, this is what you do. If you've got a failure to extract, this is what you do. If you've got, a live round that's partially fed, this is what you do. And I'm like going, so...
That seems like a lot.
And I just said, how about if no matter what the problem is, I drop the mag, rack the slide, and reload, and the problem's fixed. And he kind of goes, we prefer to take a more advanced look, at the... And I'm just kind of like going...
Great and everything, but
I don't know.
tap rack bang seems to work pretty well for most things.
Yeah.
Well, and you don't have... Why waste the time analyzing it and applying a specific response to it when there's essentially one response that'll clear all of it?
Everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if tap rack bang doesn't fix it, then you have a serious problem that's going to require more time to pay attention to. So, we drill for a universal solution for things, and that's a real big benefit.
I'm a big fan of the apply one solution to
Exactly.
all the problems, trying to figure out what
Plus, if you think about it in a self-defense situation, if you're in the dark, how are you supposed to analyze what the problem is?
Exactly.
The gun's not working, and you can do a tap rack bang in the dark, and that seems to me to be like a pretty good defensive technique to have mastered. And I sometimes I kick myself when I have had a jam, because I don't know what was wrong. All I know is that I cleared it as quickly as I could, and then I think to myself, it would have been nice to have looked to see what the problem was so that I know if it'll crop up again.
That's a really good point, because when I've had jams or whatever before, I'm so automatic about clearing them that I almost wish I would have stopped and looked. They're like, oh, what was this, or whatever that happened, so I can possibly fix it. But you sit there and you ask other people, did you see that? Did you see what it did?
What happened?
Yeah, and it's like, no, you cleared it so fast, so nobody's got a chance to see it. So, it's a good thing that you're doing it quickly, but if your gun's not working right, it's a bad thing. You have no idea what went wrong.
One of the things that I think really helps the competition won't get you killed argument is look at law enforcement, military. They bring in guys like Todd Jarrett and Rob Leatham and top competition shooters. The Army has the Army Marksmanship Unit, which, yes, they run around winning 3-gun matches and winning...
But then they go back and train the rest of the soldiers.
Train shooters and train soldiers. And they take... And I'm not saying it's a one-to-one transition. Obviously, you're not going into a gunfight with a 32-round open gun, but... which actually, if I could pick a pistol to go to a gunfight, 32 rounds, optics,
yeah.
But be that as it may, there is a lot from competition, and I think the biggest benefit for competition is what you guys said. We shoot better. We handle our guns better.
Right.
And, we can learn. I can go to Insights and learn tactics. I can learn, which parts of me to stick around corners and when to not do it. But you're not necessarily going to learn gun handling, from a tactics school, and vice versa.
Yeah, the other thing that we see also, at least in this area around here, there's a lot of cops who come out and shoot competition every weekend. I mean, they're out there, out there doing it. So if it was such a bad thing and would teach bad tactics from their standpoint, I'm sure they would not be doing it or would not be allowed to do it. So,
and they are themselves instructors. That's a lot of them for their departments.
Yeah.
So they're transferring their knowledge of competition. But of course, they do have the ability to pick and choose. They're maybe better qualified than me to say this is a good technique for, and this is not. But police work isn't the same as self-defense either. A lot of police work is offense.
Right.
They must go search for somebody. They have to clear that house. And in self-defense situation, you generally don't have to do that.
And I was going to just make a comment about the house clearing exercises and whatnot. Is that you'll notice? I mean, typically all 99% of the IPSC stages are usually house clearing exercises where you're driving into the stage, shooting things as you go,
looking for things to shoot.
And every once in a while, you'll see a retreating where you're backing up and doing the same thing in reverse. But I also notice, a lot of the IDPA stages are similar. Is that the thing is shoot everybody.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. If I shot an IDPA stage is maximum 9 threat targets, right? if I went into a situation and shot 9 people, I'd probably end up talking to a grand jury regardless of what went down. So again, we acknowledge it's not realistic in terms of, I'm never going to, if I get into a gunfight where I'm, wearing my USPSA production rig and I have 7 mags, then something really, really went wrong that day. I mean, really bad.
Well, I often think too, when I shoot, I do shoot a lot of IDPA, and I try to think about, especially when I'm designing a stage, whether it's not just plausible or possible, but doesn't make any sense, And I thought one of the things about IDPA in the self-defense context is every time you draw your gun, you shoot something.
Yes.
And I don't know that that's something that you want to have ingrained into you.
Not necessarily,
Generally, you're probably not going to have your gun out unless you've already decided there's a threat in a self-defense situation. But the idea that whenever you draw, something gets shot.
Somebody gets shot.
I don't, if I were to think of something that in my mind kind of gives me pause about how IDPA in particular translates into self-defense situations, that's probably the one at the top. Other than things like, cover won't always be available. People always try to find little things like that. But I always think right at the top of the list is I'm conditioned to draw and shoot what's standing in front of me. And that's something that concerns me more than whether or not I have my knee exposed when I'm kneeling behind cover.
On the flip side, I'm sure that you draw your gun administratively when you're practicing, or I draw my gun administratively during matches to load and make ready, and I don't shoot anything.
Right.
So I think that, I actually had this conversation very similar to this recently, and a guy was saying you train yourself just to shoot whenever you see a threat. And I'm like, well, yes, but that's because I'm also mentally in a situation where I've acknowledged that I'm here to shoot everything.
Right.
Go to a match and you're like, I expect that I'm going to shoot most of
and that's kind of like what I was saying earlier, is it's not like you go into a situation and flip your mind off and just all of a sudden it's like, everybody's going to get shot and I'm going to go forward and everybody gets 2 rounds and
But I
charge
also,
forward, shoot everybody twice, baby in a stroller.
I don't know to what extent my competition experiences will transfer into a self-defense situation. Because I went out and did paintball for the first time. I went out and did paintball for the first time, which is the first time I've ever had anybody shooting at me in any context. And I got shot, painted, whatever, marked. In every game we played, every time by a 16-year-old girl.
Did you enjoy it?
Did her dad try to build you a custom gun for $7 grand?
But I was thinking while playing, I was in little kind of lulls in the action when you would say do a tack load, for instance. I would think about things like, okay, if this were an IDPA match, how much of me would be hanging out around this wall as I'm peeking like this?
You would hang like
this is how much I would peek out.
In your head.
And I'm praying for somebody who's using IDPA legal cover out there so I can hit him with a paintball gun. But it was just very interesting what was going through my mind, and it wasn't anything to do with the gun.
Well,
I wasn't thinking about how much ammo do I have. I wasn't thinking about manipulating the gun or shooting the gun. I was thinking more in the context of minimizing the chances of getting shot. And the gun was just kind of along for the ride.
And my guess is probably everybody else's philosophy is just pull a trigger and spray paintballs in any direction they'll go and hope I hit something. And they generally do.
There was some of that going on, too. It was just, in the first couple of games, I fired 10 rounds before I got hit.
Because you were aiming, probably.
The third game, I went through 100 rounds.
There you go.
And didn't hit anything. But
you looked cool.
But I was laying down suppressive fire like you wouldn't believe. Anything that moved got 4 or 5 rounds thrown at it.
Did you get the finger roll technique down?
No. Some people were telling me, you can kind of bump fire them a little bit, get them in this kind of static zone where it'll for a while anyway. But these were just semi-automatics, and it was fun. But I was the whole time I was doing it, it was almost like a lab experiment. I was thinking to myself, because the girls, it was a birthday party for our girls, so there was like a half a dozen 16-year-old girls, and it was the parents against the kids. And they're all like going, oh, we don't want to shoot against Rick because he shoots every weekend. I'm like going, yeah, but I've never shot a paintball gun before.
Well, maybe you were a marked target just from that standpoint.
Well,
they may have all seen
you were a hunting man.
Rick.
My marksmanship abilities certainly didn't do any good. The thing's not accurate enough to take advantage of it. It's probably, the markers were probably capable of holding like an 8-inch group
at yard accuracy.
15 yards, And so it was mostly about just trying not to get caught out in the open where somebody can hit you. And so I was very conscious of cover. I mean, I was every time I moved, it was always like, okay, here I am at cover, and there's more cover. Now is somebody going to shoot me between here and there, kind of a thing. And I wasn't really thinking much about the gun or, am I, what shooting stance am I using? I mean, I was doing stuff like this, and it was very interesting. Nothing like, I don't know what I expected it to be, but it was nothing like I expected it to be.
If you guys out there ever get a chance, I strongly recommend taking any kind of force-on-force training that you can. I've done a very
but not against 16-year-old girls.
I've done a minimal amount of simunitions training, and you learn a lot of interesting things. You get shot in the hands a lot, actually, in simunitions training, because people will tend to look at the movement. They'll look at your gun. So you draw a gun at someone, and all they see is your gun, so they're shooting at that. I got shot in the hands a lot, which was actually fairly unpleasant. I don't recommend it. But, again, you learn a lot, and it helps. If you're a dedicated competition shooter who shoots USPSA or IDPA a lot, it helps you see what skills are going to translate. And again, the gun handling skills were very, those crossed over. Obviously not the paintball because, again, here's your group with a paintball gun and the trigger's not even right. But, there's stuff.
Okay, so something I wanted to discuss is the infamous reloads or retaining magazines with rounds in them. Or
without rounds in them.
Or dumping magazines with rounds on the ground.
Right.
And I know that's a big point in IDPA that it's a requirement that you do that. And I know a lot of people, and I know that a lot of people really do not like that requirement in IDPA.
I think it's because they don't understand the reason behind it. They see it as, if my mag is empty, why do I have to keep it? Which is a perfectly reasonable argument, except that the foundation of the rule is that your first indication that your mag is empty is the slide will be locked back.
So
you will never know that you have a round in the chamber and an empty mag.
Let's take it back from like Deuteronomy to Genesis though, and go back to the.
Oh, this is getting good.
Why do I have to retain a mag that's got say 2 rounds in it? All right, now.
What if you've only got 2 mags?
Well, I'm carrying a Glock 17, so I've got 17 rounds in my spare mag.
That's a good argument.
And that's the thing, and I think a lot of that started with a sport, in IDPA that was designed very much with 1911 to be friendly to 1911s.
Well, of course, no matter what the capacity of your gun is, in IDPA, you're never got more than 10.
Right.
So,
and that's the thing that kills me about the let's retain mags argument is on the street or in the real world, I carry 17 round spare. I carry 17 round mags. So if I have in a self-defense situation shot 15 rounds of ammunition, and all of a sudden I have a lull in the action. Well, how do I know it's a lull in the action? There's all these questions like
script lull in action.
Right. Like to me, a lull in the action is when everybody that was trying to kill me is no longer trying to kill me.
Right.
In which case, then I'm just going to reload my gun anyway.
But of course, in an IDPA match, when you would be doing that reload, that's exactly what's happening.
Exactly.
Let's say it's essentially now that they've taken the retention reloads off the clock. You'll reload essentially between strings or between stages. So all the available targets are dead and down before you do the reload.
Okay, so let's focus on that. Why did they take it off the clock? Because if the idea is to do a quick and fast reload.
No, the idea is you're topping off your gun when there's nobody left to shoot, but there may be a future.
But isn't it an attribute to be able to do a quick reload?
It is.
It is.
I was very much against taking it off the clock.
I would be too.
But I think that arose out of this confusion about what the magazine change was for.
But
people would say, why the heck would I be retaining my mag when the bullets are flying? Well, you don't. Well, then why am I doing it with the clock running? Shouldn't I be doing it like between stages? So they said, okay, let's take it off the clock. Because that simulates when you would do that type of reload.
But that makes the assumption that there's a lull in the action, somebody isn't going to spring around the corner really quick at you.
You never know.
Well, and then you have stages
but they're making the assumption that they're saying, designated spot in course of fire.
Exactly.
Lull in action all the time in the world to reload.
Well, there's 4 targets and you've shot all 4 of them. That's a lull in the action, isn't it?
But if I were a revolver, I had to reload.
That makes the assumption that and that's the other thing with
it's a simulation.
The intent of
It's a simulation.
IDPA or whatever is that you're not supposed to know everything that's out there that's happening.
Exactly.
I think it's the neat thing about surprise stages or whatever is you don't know what you're running into. You don't know where things are going to be, when they're going to pop out, whatever. I think it's a good thing about the simunition training or force on force is that you don't know.
Terrifying.
You don't know when somebody's going to pop around the corner on you.
Right.
You know, and I think there is that you want to be up and running as fast as you possibly can. So in my mind, you know, like you were saying, you don't know that you have 2 rounds in your magazine or 3 rounds or whatever it is. But I know I've been doing a lot of shooting, and the gun's still working.
That's the thing too. You have cops who they'll ask them in an after-action report they were involved in a shooting. How many rounds do you fire?
No clue.
They say 3, and there's 17 cases on the ground.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So this idea is you think you've been doing a lot of shooting, you don't know.
But the thing is, okay, fine. So they've been doing, shooting. Maybe they have thought they only fired 3, but in reality it's 15. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, they know they got to do a reload. I'm not going to take the time to carefully stow that magazine and get it all put away and put the other one in there to be up and running again. It's like, get the gun loaded and get ready to go.
Yeah, I'm in his camp. I mean, if
I don't disagree, except that you're not talking about the difference between a second and 5 seconds.
Right.
You're talking about the difference between 2 seconds and 3 seconds.
Well, here's my thought on this, right?
Well, it depends on the reloader and how fast they can do
exactly,
it.
Exactly.
Let's go back to the lull in the action, all right? So you're in a self-defense situation. You shoot a bunch of people. There's no one apparent left for you to shoot, right?
Let's say you're in your own house.
Right. So you're
3 guys kick open the door. You shoot all 3 of them.
Right.
Is that a lull in the action?
You happen to be carrying a spare mag at the time. Well,
because you shot them. There they are in your living room.
But what about the other guys around the corner that you didn't know about?
So
you don't know that he's there, right?
Come on down quickly. We're ruined. Yeah. Ruined.
I know.
So you shoot a bunch of guys, and you decide. So you do it
legally.
You shoot a bunch of guys, right? So you shoot all these guys, and then you do a
2 each.
2 each. Mozambique, if it's IDPA.
Right.
Sequence.
1 1 1 2 1 1 1. Oh, he stayed right where I shot him the first time. That was so nice.
If you'd only shot him once, you'd have an extra round.
So you shoot it. So you shoot all these guys. You do your reload.
Right.
And you do a USPSA style speed.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a mag on the floor with partial rounds in it.
Right.
Now you have a fully loaded gun in case there are more bad guys.
Right.
If it is really a lull in the action, we'll pick up your mag.
Right.
And now you have a fully loaded
get
gun.
around to it when you
shoot. When you get around to it. And that's kind of my thought process on it.
And of course, that's a legal reload in IDPA.
It is.
Off the ground?
Yeah.
Yep. You can drop it on the ground as long as you pick it up and store it.
As long as I pick it up and stow it before I fire my next shot.
Well, yeah, but okay, what you could do there, and I'm following your theory, is that you do your speed reload, one guy pops from the corner, you nail him, and then there's a big 5-second pause, and then you can pick your magazine up and go do something. But an
you can't
IDPA,
do that.
you can't do that.
You have to pick it up before you fire a shot.
What you can do in IDPA, I shot a stage that had a table where you finished up in front of a table. And so on my last reload, I went. We actually asked the safety officer because your mag started on the table that you finished in front of. So you had to run over, grab a mag, go shoot some guys, and then come back to this table to finish. And I said, so does a mag on the table count as a retained mag? And he said, well, yes, it does. So at the end of that stage, I needed 2 more rounds to finish it off. So I just dumped the mag. It hit the table, bounced once, stayed on the table because it was retained by the table. Since your mag started on the table, they were retained by the table.
Wow, this sounds like the infamous magnet and retaining magazines and retention.
So this was a club match, so I don't think you'd ever see a stage like that.
Was the table behind your body center line?
No, it was not. But but it was the start position for your gun and your mag started on the table as well.
So that's an interesting question that came up. Does the start position trump the rule book?
Oh, God.
Because the rule book says all ammo
has to be behind
the body center line. But if the start position is with it on the table, which takes precedence?
Right. Well, then we had a stage.
In IPSC or USPSA.
Well, yeah, any sport.
In USPSA, there's a specific provision in there saying, unless otherwise stated in the written stage briefing or whatever, which basically says, because like you're saying, production, you can't have stuff in front of you.
Right.
But then you have unloaded gun starts and magazines on table. Well, technically that violates it, and there's a provision in there saying, unless stipulated by the stage briefing, which then allows it to
take precedence.
Supersede or violate or whatever the rule.
Can you mix and match? Like at the start, the mags will start on the table, but then after the course of fire has started, then everything has to comply with the rules?
I've seen stage briefings at IDPA matches where it said your gun and everything starts here, and the stage briefing actually said all mags must be stowed before your first shot is fired. So the timer went off, you loaded, and stowed mags with your other hand.
Well, there's some disagreement, not in my mind, but by others, in USPSA, in that it says that magazines must be carried in retention devices or pockets. So if you have unloaded magazines on table, unloaded gun start position,
You should have to put them in the pouches.
You should have to put them in your pouches or your pocket. You can carry them in your hand. That's legal. They put a provision in for that. But you can't start stuffing them in your waistband and stuff like that. And that is, I mean, that's true for all divisions, not just production or whatever. Magazines have to be carried in pockets or retention devices.
And this is where the magnet conversation came from.
Exactly.
For limited and open. Is a magnet a retention device?
Right. Yeah, in a retention device. So.
To get back to the tack load, I think a lot of the rules, such as you must initiate the reloads behind cover, you can't dump rounds, you can't dump a mag if you have a round in the chamber. All those rules really are designed to prevent round dumping.
Yes.
I mean, that's what it's for. If you could reload as soon as your gun was empty, you wouldn't wait till you got to cover. You'd fire 3 extra rounds and reload on the way.
Exactly.
And so it's a kind of a unintended consequence maybe of this focus
the best
on the round.
You realize that if they do apply that, what you're suggesting, it is the next one step closer to IPSC.
Well, the problem with the round dumping rule, and so we're totally off the subject of self-defense versus competition now because
not completely, because some people claim that if they were in a gunfight, they would reload out in the open. They wouldn't wait till they got to cover.
I would. I'd reload as soon as I possibly could.
But my point is, if you reload when your gun's empty.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing.
If my gun is empty out in the open, I'm going to reload as fast as I can while I'm running to cover.
But in IDPA, if you were allowed to reload out in the open, you'd run your gun dry intentionally. Which I don't think you would do in a self-defense real-world situation.
But the thing about that whole is that presupposes that running your gun, shooting 3 extra shots is going to give you some kind of advantage.
Well, and I use that as a bad example.
Right.
It's actually
it's usually 1 extra.
People think that round dumping is firing like 5 shots at a target that needs 2, but it's really firing 3 shots at a target that needs 2.
One of the best examples of round dumping is. A lot of stages will start with like a target you fire at 6 times while you're retreating, right? And I've seen countless shooters, they'll retreat and they'll shoot 7 at that target. And you'll have, a fist-sized group in the down 0 because they started at contact distance and they just wham, that thing. And, obviously they're firing a 7th round to get a better reload point. But at the same time, to call that penalty on a shooter requires the safety officer to be able to read minds. Because you can't tell, I didn't like my sight picture as I was backing away. I thought I threw it down 1, so...
Maybe my gun doubled.
Yeah.
I like the guy, though, he's backing up. He goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then he goes, shoots it again. It's like, damn, I meant to shoot 7, but I only shot 6.
But, with round dumping as respect to self-defense, that doesn't really make sense to me for a lot of reasons, because again, in a self-defense situation, if you're shooting,
that's a liability.
Most people, most people who actually have to pull triggers, they just shoot the first threat until it goes away or their gun stops working, and then they worry about the next one.
Right.
And if I'm in a situation where I've shot all 17 rounds out of my gun and there's still people trying to kill me, I'm going to want to reload it as fast as I possibly can so I can keep shooting those guys.
And you're not going to run into a situation in illegal defensive shooting where you fire, your 6 rounds on somebody, because that's what it took to take them down. And you go, I'm going to speed up my reload for the next guy, so I'm just going to pop this guy a couple more down these out.
Just to be on the safe side.
Right, because it'll speed my reload up.
Well, but
don't shoot him to the ground.
You think about the stories.
You shoot him to the ground. You shoot him till they stop. But after they stop, you don't continue shooting him.
Once he's on the ground, don't pop him once in the chest just to get a better reload for the other 3 guys.
You think of the stories that are told about the M1 Garand, where you can't top it off.
Right.
So you fired 6 rounds. Do you save the 2 rounds that are in it, or do you just blow them into the berm so that you can reload and have 8 more?
Reload the gun, right.
And so I think it's one. That's a real life situation where you're faced with: do I take these 2 rounds? Let's say you're going to leave cover, jump out of your foxhole.
Yeah.
You've got 2 rounds in the gun. Do I
blast
those off and then reload?
Often that may have happened in World War II.
I mean, you always fire 8.
Yeah.
You never bother with firing 5 or 6 or 7. It's always 8, so that you're always able to top it off.
Yeah.
Because I
or did they wait for a lull in the action?
Exactly. Well, the lull wouldn't help. Because you can though. You could
cycle it twice.
Well, you could eject. There's a clip ejector, right?
Yeah.
Press the button and pop the whole thing out.
Also loaded end block will come out?
Yeah, there's a button on the side
Well,
of the receiver. If you press it,
won't-
it'll pop out.
It might not come out though. Sometimes the loaded ones
Yeah,
wouldn't come
but
out.
assuming
like,
it's downloaded,
Right,
the
if there's two
follower
left.
spring will kick the clip and everything out. But and that takes time to rather than just go blam blam, to try to
Stick your
manipulate
muzzle
the
over
thing.
there.
Yeah, but I think it's a similar situation in that I've often when I'm shooting IDPA, I think to myself, do I want an empty gun so that I can reload by the time I get there, or do I want to take one round in the gun all the way over there so that I can fire it and then do the reload?
You know what makes it even worse? There are stages now that will be set up in such a way that it's advantageous for you to do a reload with retention on the clock.
Oh, yeah.
I
I shot a stage like the last IDPA match I shot was that way, where we had to go prone.
Yep, there was one at the World Championship.
And so I'm thinking, do I want to reload like this before I get down on the ground, or do I want to get down there, run the gun dry, and then be trying to reload like this?
I did that. Don't try to reload.
So I did. I watched 3 or 4 guys do it, and I'm like going, their reloads are taking like 8 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm like going, I'm going to do this as I'm walking over to my cover position. By the time I get down there, and so that. But again, I think if you look at the IDPA rules, they're all written with the same theme. And I think if you start picking them out and saying, I don't want to do this one anymore, I don't want to do this one anymore, makes the rest of them make even less sense.
That's true. But remove the round dumping rule. It sucks. Hate it. Or, you know what you could do to solve round dumping, and we're getting kind of far afield?
It's fun, though.
Don't force people to load, X+1. Because think, if I started an SSP stage with 10 rounds in my gun, round dumping is effectively eliminated right there. Because most of the time, people will round dump because they have an you never see revolver guys round dump because they don't have any bullets.
Right.
But because the stages are generally set up with 2 shots each, because we're conditioned to draw and shoot 2.
Yeah.
Usually, the only time it's advantageous to round dump is because I've shot 5 targets and I've got that 1 extra round, and I don't want to reload. So, if you really wanted to solve it and keep the spirit of everything else intact, don't make it X+1. Make it X.
Well,
I think they need to put a LCD screen above each target with a random number generator running behind it, and then
here we go.
Times to shoot it?
Free.
No, I think you're absolutely right, though, that the reason that most IDPA stages are 2 rounds each on paper targets. So if you've got an odd number of rounds in your gun, that's the one that you need to dump so that the reload comes where you want it to. And I found that out. I shot at ESP for a year with a 1911 that has 9-round mags.
Oh, those are great for ESP.
And I would rather shoot 9+1 than 10+1 because I didn't have that extra round. I was always reloading between targets instead of reloading in the middle of a target, or taking that 1 round with me someplace, shooting it, and then doing a reload instead of reloading before I go. Exactly. And so that's not I mean, I wouldn't have ever considered that before, but it might not be a bad idea to have capacity of 9 and then 7 for CDP, so that everybody starts with an even number of rounds in the gun.
Yeah, or make it optional. Say, all right, you can start the stage with either 10 or 10+1. It is up to the shooter's discretion, and give them, because I mean, think about it. If you want to reflect real life situations. Glocks have 17-round mag capacities. Some of them have 15. Some guns, some Glocks carry 17. Some carry 15.
13.
Some guns carry 13. M&Ps carry, different. So everyone's going to have a gun with a different capacity. So why are we kneecapping everything at 10 rounds or 10+1?
Well, that's another discussion.
Yeah. Well, hang on. All right. So
when the rule book came out, 10 was the legal limit.
That's true. But give people the option. If I want to load 10+1 because there's
would it be for the whole match or for each stage?
That's more thinking than I'm capable of doing right now. But for now, let's say you can elect from stage to stage if I will shoot 10 or 10+1. And because I get to a stage that has a pepper popper in it where I'm going to go 2, 4, 6 popper, I'll want that extra round.
Right.
But if there's no popper, no steel targets, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to expose myself to a penalty.
Interesting.
Yeah. Look at me thinking outside the box.
Yeah, damn.
That's too much thinking for me.
Right.
Okay. Well, you
now
what? The self-defense competition, and
I think we beat that horse into the ground.
That was kind of fun. Well,
it was.
Is that all we have to say on the topic?
Competition shooting won't get you killed, probably, I think is our final.
I think the takeaway is that it definitely helps your gun handling skill under pressure, and that's the one main attribute that competition shooting really does.
And I also think you can't look for defensive truth in the rules of the game.
Right.
I mean,
because we're playing a game.
Yeah, the games have a set of circumstances that are always going to apply all the time, and when you're out on the street in the real world, there are no rules,
yeah.
and things are going to be different every time.
Right.
So.
And I think if you have the opportunity to take a good self-defense class,
yeah, I was going to say take
that.
the self-defense class and then back it up with going to matches just to keep proficient at the stuff that you learned. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you learn in self-defense classes you can't do in a match because, like the one-handed drills and whatnot, where you have to simulate that your right arm's incapacitated, you got to draw
one-handed
with the left
reloads
hand.
and stuff.
Yeah, you can't do that. But a lot of stuff that you can do.
And
that you learn, you can do it in the
stops you from
competition.
shooting a USPSA match or an IDPA match like it's a real defensive situation.
Right.
There's nothing in the USPSA rules that says you have to run it and gun it. If you want to move carefully, use cover, then do that. But real good advice from Todd Green from PistolTraining.com is if you're going to do that, accept right then and there that you don't care about your score and all you care about is reinforcing defensive habits.
Right.
So go to the game to either play the game or go to train for defensive habits. But if you try to do both, you'll end up compromising whatever it is you're trying to teach yourself.
Right.
That's a great way to end. I'll take that. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
It's a good conclusion.
Okay, so you can hit the website at powerfactorshow.com.
Or send us an email at powerfactorshow@gmail.com.
Or once again, hit us up on Facebook at facebook.com/powerfactorshow.
All right, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Bye.